So Bitcoin has just broken a very key level, which a lot of traders have been watching for the past, week or two, which is the 6.8K level. So let's have a look at the weekly and see what this could mean for the probability of a trend reversal. So first of all, I think it's worthy to note these big parallel channels in price. So we had a 70% drop here, the first one, this one over here. From the second one, we had a 46% drop, and from the third one, we had a 43% drop. All right. So what does this mean? This means that the top of these channels, where we resisted from, created a very significant pullback in price, meaning that these lines, when matched up against each other, tend to be rather irrelevant in terms of this diagonal trend line. So right now we're on log scale, just to note. Later we can go to the normal scale to verify or to see how those results compare. But what's worthy to note is that, well, first of all, that we've broken out of this most recent parallel channel. And secondly, of course, that marking with this resistance line has also now broken out. Now, what does that mean? That means that this resistance, which was resistance for red, will now turn into potential support. All right, so this is where we broke out of it. And now, if we do come down back, we're going to be hoping to test this level. So, and of course, it just happens to be the previous. This used to be resistance, now it's support. So there is a pretty decent chance that we will come back down to test it. And if we come back down to test it and bounce off of it again, this will be a yet stronger sign that we are really going to be able to maintain this upwards momentum. So that's a good sign. Before I go on to the resistance, I'd like to just point out the last time that we had a very relevant point, which was over here. Okay, so first of all, I'm going to mark it as red to show that it was resistance. All right, so we had a resistance point up here, one, and then we had a resistance point over here. If we draw to the wicks of the candles, and look at what happened after this. So the third time, this acted as a minor resistance over here with this wick ending at the top there. Then we came back, then we broke through it, and we came back down, we tested it, and we didn't actually properly break through. We did have a fake out over here with the wicks, admittedly, but look how this previous resistance turned into support. Support over here, support, little fake out, and stronger support over here. So this was already a good sign, but because there are further resistance lines, it wasn't the end of it. And now the other two lines which seem relevant are these two, one of which, as just mentioned, we've already broken out through. So unless we break down back through this line, I think that the two major resistance lines are already broken, which is great news for Bitcoin. And these, not only do we have 2 out of 3 resistance lines broken, but I think that these two are more major. Sorry, let's just draw that one in again. So this one, and of course these two previous resistances are now supports. These ones are more major than this red one. Why? Because, well, first of all, because they go back to a further point in time. So these are more than 6 months worth of resistance. And secondly is that, as we just previously measured, this has a much bigger move down, all right? This was like a 70% move down. This was 45%, like this was 43. So the bigger the move down, the stronger the resistance point is. And both of these lines intersect at this very strong resistance, initial resistance point, whereas this one it does not. So taking these, at least taking this line out, we see that the next resistance is, and again, I think this is purely in terms of diagonal resistance lines, which by themselves are not the greatest indicator of a trend reversal. We're doing great, I would say that we're out 85% of the way, because I think this is relatively insignificant compared to those. So in any case, as previously mentioned, this will be the test. If we can come back and do something like we did over here, where this acts as resistance, and then it acts as support. We may see something similar to this, acts as, we resist, we come back, we support. Maybe we even come back down further, but we maintain support. So that would be already a good sign. Of course, even better for the bulls would be that we come back down here, it acts as support, and then we bounce right back up. And of course, the next point of resistance, which is quite clear from this graph, not only from the diagonal resistance lines, but from the horizontal ones, is this point over here. So 7.8K. So we have this resistance over here, and it coincides, has the confluence over here with this line. So if we reach this point next week, or rather it'll be 2 weeks from now, that will almost certainly act as a strong resistance on the way up. But that being said, I think the biggest part of this is over now, the biggest part of the diagonal resistance. Of course, there are still other very important indicators to look at, and those would be, for me, the EMA, the 12 EMA and the 26 EMA. Now, there are different EMAs that we can look at, but for now, we're going to look at these, and I think that they're especially relevant because of how well they have maintained support. So if we just go back in history a little bit, we'll see that, excuse me, especially the blue EMA has been particularly significant. So we have this big move up over here, and what happens is that we held quite nicely above the 26 EMA. Here we had a big breakthrough, massive wick. Of course, this is 2014, when market cap of Bitcoin was much smaller and volatility was higher. So this is to be expected. But even so, we have a candle close above the 26 EMA. And not only that, but after we broke through this, this actually did lead to the further downtrend. And look what happened here. This 26 blue line acted as resistance. We had a fake out over here, and which didn't work out. So in other words, we broke out through it, but we didn't come back and support the line, at least not for any significant amount of time. Only these sort of 4 candles here, which were above it. Here we had a proper breakout. So we had these 3 white soldiers over here, 3 green candles in a row, essentially. And then we came back down here to test it, and we had a whole number of candles above the 26 EMA. And what happened there? Well, we went from 365 all the way to 20,000, okay? And of course, we did come back to test it. And this is what's most relevant. Look at this. So we came back to testing, and it just acted as very solid support. Now, obviously, we have broken this over here, which is not the greatest sign, and also a sign that we shouldn't be super confident about the reversal just as yet, because as mentioned, the diagonal resistance lines are just one small component of what we can use to determine the likelihood of a reversal. But what is worthy to note is that, well, first of all, that we're at the 12 EMA. So the 12 EMA has also been rather relevant in the sense that when we were, although the very big trend always maintained support at 26, look at the 12, which also maintained good support when we were flying high sky high, especially. Support. And once we broke through that, of course, once we broke through that, then we tested the 26, and then we broke through that as well. So what does this mean? This means that the first sign, in terms of 12 and 26 EMA, the first sign that we're looking for is a breakthrough of the 12 EMA, which, as you can see, we're literally testing right now. So So before we can determine a trend reversal, in other words, with a much higher percent probability, uh, we will really have to not only break through the 26 EMA, but then come back down and test it and have, let's say, at least 7 or 8 candles, weekly candles, which close above the 26 EMA. Now, for aggressive traders, this may be a bit too long to wait, as there is a good chance that Bitcoin will be not just around the 10K, but maybe even like the 13 or 12K level, if not higher, by the time we wait for that breakout and support of this line. Nonetheless, once you have those two factors, it's, I would say, probably close to 90% chance that we are in a confirmed reversal and that we will actually go on to test the previous highs. So that's it for the diagonal and resistance lines and the EMAs. In terms of the RSI, we are seeing lower lows here, but as I posted in a previous video, the incline of these lower lows is getting smaller and smaller. Let's just see. Yeah, this should be it. Wait, it's not really working as planned. Here we go. So the incline of these lines is getting smaller and smaller. Oops. Meaning that although we're in a downtrend, the downtrend has been slowing down, okay? I posted the exact numbers pertaining to how this is slowing down in a previous video. So while that is good, the RSI does have lower lows, which is not super encouraging. But that being said, the MACD has a higher high here. Sorry, the histogram has a higher high, while the price has a lower low, which is a very clear reversal signal, especially on a big time frame like the weekly. So overall, if I had to guess the percentage chance that we don't see lower lows, that we don't break, in other words, 5.8K, and then we go on to test the higher highs, probably something like 62%. Let's say 62%. And then if we can break this resistance line, we're going to be at, let's say if we break through it, we're going to be at like about 70%. If we can come back down and test this resistance line, it becomes support. You know, it's going to be like 75%. And once we break through the 26 EMA, it's really going to go up a lot higher, like 85%. And once we break through the 26 EMA and we come back down and test, it's probably more like 90, 93, 94%. Now, of course, I'm not a professional trader. Don't take this as buying advice. This is essentially, I don't like to call it pure speculation, because it's an educated guess based on a variety of factors and looking at what's most probable. But those would be the approximate percentages I would assign based on what I know about technical analysis, which so far isn't as much as what traders with years of experience know. But that being said, I have spent many hours looking at charts over the past 6 months, and these are pretty straightforward basic signs that you can look at to determine a trend reversal. So if you have any thoughts or anything, just let me know. All right.